mobile field kitchens. That's where all our food came from. So it was awesome. And there's Doc. Doc ran our kids' craft night or morning out there. So it was pretty awesome to see him out there and all the kids enjoying it. I think that was a record, Andy. Was it? All right. Yeah, it's fine. But really, just look for it to come out. I mean, this is just one of those opportunities that don't come around too often, and now it's going to be every year. So it was a great success, and we just want to see more people out there, more people enjoy that fellowship. So, Paul, what do you got?
Outstanding, man. Congratulations. Good job. Good job to everybody. Doc, Mark, wherever you are. Mark's out there somewhere. Andy, you had a good time? Yeah, right on. Well, next year, let's double the size. Justin, let's double the size. Let's do that for sure. All right, also on the 27th of June, while they were over there having a good time, I was over here with Walmart. Walmart just built their first case-ready plant, and it's in Olathe, Kansas. It's going to employ 700 people. It's going to change, the dynamics of what's going on around here. Can you tell I'm a food guy? That's what I do. I'm in the food industry. But, Walmart was one of the first companies in the grocery industry that saw what F.I.S.H. was all about and wanted to support us. This is the biggest check that they've ever given us. And really thrilled about that, because with this check, we're going to be able to serve more families, more military families at our annual Christmas party, where I don't think they're in here. I'm going to kind of drop a little load here on and let them know. So we find families that have kids that they're struggling. They may not have a Christmas. And we have some elves that when Santa calls their name, the elves hand them an envelope. Inside there's enough money for them to go shopping for their kids. Anywhere from $500 up to $1,500. And we're going to do that again, right? It's going to be even bigger. So that's what that money's going to go for. Next picture, the 4th of July. Justin, Doc, Mark, you guys are a big part of this. The Marines, once again, did a big enlistment. How many people? 12 poolies. 12 poolies, Mark. Poolies. And we also presented our 47th service dog to an Air Force veteran. And again, in F.I.S.H. style, he didn't see it coming either, Stephen. That's how it works. And there we go. Incredible young man. He's got all kinds of allergies, so we found the perfect dog, a hypoallergenic poodle. And so it was a great night. I didn't get to stay because I was manning taking care of the veteran, but it was a huge turnout. What was the turnout like, Justin? That's amazing. So we're going to be doing that again next year. The following day, July 5th, Mark Morgan and I and his family were at Knuckleheads. They had an event for our veterans, and we were the organization that they brought up on stage. Mark talked a little bit about, how the military has impacted his family. We had another young man that joined us on stage, Jonathan, that I don't think he's here tonight, but Jonathan, Jonathan, he, oh my gosh, that guy had the most powerful voice. It was a great time. And again, the turnout for that concert, there was about 800 people or so there total, but F.I.S.H. was a part of that. And then on the 13th of July, as you guys may or may not know, we always name our service dogs after someone that's been a part of our F.I.S.H. family, someone that's important to us, because our veterans names mean a lot. Stephen, I don't think Kenton's in here. Kenton's dog, Donovan, and we named a dog after Al Fitzmaurice. Al had actually fostered a couple of our dogs early on. Al was one of the coaches when we used to do the blue on black softball game. And man, the guy was a wonderful animal lover, and he's the one that introduced us to the Royals and got the Royals involved with us. So on the 13th, on the field, the Royals made a $5,000 donation in honor of Al Fitzmaurice, which was just absolutely phenomenal. And I know a lot of our volunteers were there for the game as well. It was a hot day, boy. And what's so cool, if you guys are Royals fans, if you go to the 50-50 area, you'll see one of our guys a couple years ago, we presented a track chair on the field, and that's Daniel getting his chair. So I thought that was pretty cool. And next month, we have retired Colonel Pat Proctor that's going to be sharing his story. Here's our August speaker. And then Doc, are you going to introduce? It's time for us to introduce our guest speaker tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Doc Puska to come on up. Yeah.
I think the Marines won. Hoorah. Well, it's my privilege to introduce, you're the 82nd speaker in our F.I.S.H. speaker series, John. A gentleman with the right stuff, in his American grit and spirit, could not be canceled. And it is indeed a privilege to introduce Colonel John Clark. I'm going to take a couple of minutes here. He's a native and current resident of Columbia, Missouri. During the Vietnam War, Colonel Clark's RF-4 was shot down while on a tactical reconnaissance flight out of Udon, Thailand, over North Vietnam. He was captured, spent 6 years as a prisoner of war, and was released in February of 1973, and you're going to hear about those 6 years tonight. Upon his release, and being the man that he is, he joined his family in Columbia, separated from active duty, and joined the reserves. In 1979, the Missouri National Guard. While in the Air National Guard, he was promoted to the rank of colonel and has held the positions of commander of the 131st Civil Engineering Squadron, state director of operations for Air State Plans and Programs officer, and for 2 years prior to his retirement from the Air National Guard in January of 1992, he commanded the 231st Civil Engineering Flight and was the United States Air Force elite group. He was on the command staff. Colonel Clark has a couple copies of his book here too, and he'll explain the background of that book to you. It's kind of interesting. His decorations include, among others, the Silver Star, 2 Legions of Merit, the Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 Purple Hearts, the Notorious Service Medal, 6 Air Medals, and the Air Force Commendation Medal, and 2 Republic of Vietnam Crosses of Gallantry. And again, it's my privilege to introduce Colonel John Clark.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I guess the mic's transmitting. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Oh, hey, the mic's doing just great. Okay. I wanted to say good evening to everyone. That's the start. And it is a delight for me to be here this evening with you guys and with the Olathe Friends in Service of Heroes. And I understand, and I heard again tonight, that you all have presented almost 50 veterans with service dogs, and what a blessing those dogs are to these veterans in need. And certainly I would encourage you to keep those dogs coming, because they are indeed blessed. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the American Legion Speaker Series, and it is a pleasure for me to be here with you this evening. I want to welcome each of you, and I want to thank Rick for that nice introduction. Rick offered me the opportunity to bring a few books And my wife has some books here that I offered, and we have been selling, and all of the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds go to the College of the Ozarks, which prints the book. You can't buy the book on Amazon. You can buy the book from the College of the Ozarks on their website, or you can send a card to me, and you'll see that each one of those books has some cards in it. So if somebody reads the book or you're talking about it and they want a copy, there's a way to get it. Now the book is entitled The Eagle Hunts, and it is $16, but the College of the Ozarks will accept a $4 donation. So if you have a crisp $20 bill, just give it to Ann, and it all goes, including the $4 that you donated to the College of the Ozarks. And the College of the Ozarks is the one that printed the book. It is a, let's see if we're catching up here. Yeah, okay, there's a picture of me in flight gear at Alconbury in front of that monster. And the first part of the book that I wrote was really kind of intended to be for the family history, that sort of thing. And the second part of the book became a story of my renewment of faith in God. Thank you. Now, this is the airplane that I was flying, the F.4, or which is a reconnaissance version of it, which is the RF-4. We took off in a two-ship formation from Alconbury, and where's the artist? There he is, right there. Very good story, one I love to tell. He asked me if it would be okay if he painted my airplane. I said, sure, I'd love that. And he said, well, how do you want me to paint it? Well, I said, well, we're always flying in formation. So he said, okay, we'll do the formation thing. So he did, and he did two originals of this picture. This one is a little different than the one you have for sale because it shows the low ridges that we often hopped over. And so he gave me this one, and then he sold the original of the other one, the one that you have, for $3,000. I think that's quite an achievement. It was for charity, but it's amazing. Now, in March of 1967, two of us took off, two ships from Udon, Thailand, and we were flying fast and low over the Laotian jungle, and we entered North Vietnam, headed toward Hanoi. Just as we streaked at about 600 knots over about 100 feet above these ridges, just skipping over the tops of them, we ran into a flak trap, and the flak was just all over us, all around us. Never seen it like that before. So we took a hit in the belly and decided that it looked like the airplane would make it home because it rolled a couple of times kind of doggedly, and then all of a sudden it just went crazy. I've been on several airplanes that I wasn't necessarily in control of, but I always knew what they were doing. I had no idea what this airplane was doing. So I decided there's no way that I'm going to ride this through. So there were options, but they were all bleak. And one of them was just eject out of that airplane, because I knew how fast, obviously, we were flying. I knew how low we were. I knew the airplane wasn't flying. What was it going to do? It was going to crash, and it was going to hit that ridge right out there that we were closing on fast. And so we got out. And that airplane hit that ridge in about 4 seconds. So, and the reason that I know that is because it takes 4 seconds to eject a pilot from that airplane. And I ejected, and there was a big fireball right in front of me. So that airplane had become a big fireball while I was in the air waiting for my chute to open. The other aircraft escaped, broke out and rolled back, but they saw nothing but a big fireball. And so, let me, hold on here just a minute. Yeah, got to do this. Nope, that's not it quite yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. Doesn't matter.
Go back to where you were.
Oh,
I'm going back to where you were.
okay, now we're going to go forward. Now there's story here. In previous speeches, I've just used a blue slate, just a blank screen. But everybody's like, what's going on? It's screwed up. The slide isn't showing. So I said, hey, we're going to change it to a slide of something, of nothing. So that's just sky. It's nothing there. It's just sky. Just let your mind just kind of be at ease till the next one comes. Okay. Well, anyway, the other jet got out, didn't see a thing. They went back. Whoa, what's going on?
I think you were hitting the buttons, but that's okay. I'll get you back to where you were.
Okay, so apparently I am
Sorry.
getting a little excited here.
Let me get back to that blank screen. Okay, there's the blank screen right here. Okay.
All right, okay, so here we go. Anyway, I was reported, and the other pilot was reported as missing in action, presumed killed. Presumed killed because you had to make that presumption if you didn't see a corpse, and they didn't see anything. They just assumed we burned up with the airplane. But a couple of months later, when they left Vietnam and rotated back to the States, they gathered with my family and some friends and reported that at the speed we were flying and the altitude, that it would have been almost impossible for either of us to have ejected and survived. They were certain that both of us had perished in the crash. And at that moment, my younger sister, by 2.5 years now, with whom I share some Cherokee heritage, and I suppose a certain spiritual connection. And she stated unequivocally that her brother had the fastest reaction she had ever seen in a man. And that whether or not they saw us, we ejected and got out of that airplane. Well, it was 3.5 years later that she was proven correct when she received a 7-line letter from me. The other pilot got out but decided that he was going to shoot it out with the Vietnamese, and he was way outgunned. He picked suicide by Vietnamese. Faith in God, faith in your country, your family, fellow prisoners of war, and faith in yourself. Those are the 5 faiths we lived with for the next several years. Now this is the missing warrior table, which you've seen various versions of, but this is one of the better ones, and I took a picture of it. Now this book, and wait a minute, now this is pretty sensitive.
I think, yeah. Let me get back to the table.
All right.
Push it one time.
Either that or I've got a hell of a grip, and I don't know.
It's fast reaction. Quick reaction, yeah.
And so it is of this that I speak this afternoon, and Sis had faith in me, and I and her and my family with her. I knew that I was not going to perish up there and betray that faith. Now, in the beginning, I had lost any faith. In school, I was taught that science didn't support God. It supported creation and that other word I can't remember. But then came the Hanoi Hilton and the Wallow Prison, as the French named it. Okay. All right. You know, carefully put this away. That's what the Hanoi Hilton looked like when I saw it for the first time several years ago. And I will have to say, the torture, the pain, the never-ending pain, and it just possessed your mind, and the demands to forsake your nation, your fellow warriors. I knew I needed some strength to endure this, and I needed courage of the convictions that I had for my nation and hopefully for my God. Now, you know, if you smash your finger with a hammer or your thumb with a hammer, it's going to get blue, it's going to get messed up, and it hurts like the devil. But it isn't too long till it gets numb and goes away. These guys knew how to make the pain stay. And if the pain started going away in the spot they were working on, they found another spot. And they were clever enough that the torture did not leave big scars. If they had the opportunity, because of a broken limb or something like that, to twist that or otherwise abuse it, that was something they could use. And if there was a scar, nobody knew it from an ejection injury. But short of that, they did a pretty good job of covering up the scars and the tortures. Now, in the attempt to further my renewal of faith, I recall my upbringing in a big Christian church. It was on the corner of 10th Street and Walnut, if you know Columbia at all. And in spite of my wayward ways and doubts, I prayed. And I felt nothing, absolutely nothing. I prayed when I could not even clasp my hands together, nor keep my face out of the filthy floor. There was still just nothing. Terrible pain and me by myself. I had no faith, for it was gone for lack of nourishment. Then I realized that, hey, you're in this for yourself, dude, alone in this struggle. And so I turned to faith in myself, and that's one of the reasons why it's there, because yes, you can have a lot of faith in yourself. Well, I decided I could do that. I was going to do this, and I'll live through with it, and I'll do as well as I can. And I'll come back to resist. Once they break me, That's not going to stay that way. They're going to have to do this all over again. And that's what I did. But it really started this search in earnest for faith in my God. The whole concept changed and became a new realization. Now, after many days and more torture, I was just cast aside in a kind of broken mass, ended up in leg irons and handcuffs, which I guess were supposed to be a good deal. I don't know, but I'll tell you, if you've been in leg irons and handcuffs for days after days, you know, no way to relieve yourself. It's just in spot, and the pain starts haunting you, and the muscles start contorting, and you can't scratch. No, there's no scratching. Mosquitoes, no scratching. And so I gave in little by little and pretty much wrote what they decided they wanted my confession to say. Well, he did it with a lot of grammatical errors. And what's kind of humorous is at first I decided, hey, this is really stupid. Let me help you out here. What? No. Finally, very quickly, I figured out, no, I'm not doing a thing to straighten this out. And these errors, grammatical, spelling errors, really interesting and humorous kinds of things. Humorous in a demented kind of way, really. They were, however, clear indications that it was a coerced statement. I was continually told that I was a blackest criminal. Now, the blackest of criminals were those who received nothing but the harshest treatment. And it was all because I would not beg the forgiveness of the Vietnamese people, and that was why I was being punished, tortured, if you will. Well, I knew that couldn't be true because we'd had guys shot down. We knew we were up there. But for those weeks, I'd not seen or heard another American. And so I prayed for a little help, maybe to know that I wasn't the only blackest criminal. Maybe a little sign. And so there it is. That wasn't my specific cell door, but they all looked alike. And it was a small, nasty, plastered, once upon a time whitewashed space with a 20 or maybe 40 watt light bulb hanging from a very high ceiling. And it hadn't been wiped of any dust or grease or anything since the prison was built, would be my guess, for ever so often. Here'd come a clump of dust and grease down. But that light bulb was always and forever on. One night, when I awoke from a fitful sleep on this cold concrete slab, we had these barred windows that would just, there was nothing between the outside and the cell. North Vietnam gets cold. It will freeze water from time to time. But this light bulb always stayed on. I awoke one night and it wasn't on. Of course, I didn't know, the direct current light bulb just didn't go out, but this one was out. And it allowed it allowed light from the hallway to come through cracks in this big ironwood door that was the door to my cell. Now, I had been over that door and looked very carefully through all the cracks to see what I could see, and I couldn't see anything except just the hall outside. And I jumped up and looked through some of these cracks that I hadn't picked out before. And one of them was looking right across the hall at the door across the hall. All right, I thought, I'm going to see who's over there in the morning. When I heard the door open for the first meal of the day, it just slop they fed us, I was there and I was peeking. And there he was, a little smaller than I am, but just ornery looking. The same gaudy pajamas, if you will, that I had on, which I had decided identified me for brainwashing. Who else would they put in that kind of a gaudy outfit? There he was, same outfit. I thought, all right. And so, what with them beating him around because he wasn't very cooperative, I decided I am not the only blackest criminal after all. There's one across the hall. I looked back up over my shoulder to thank that light bulb for being out and allowing me to see this neighbor of mine, but it wasn't out. What a coincidence, I thought. Man, that was very timely. But I assumed it was probably one of those frayed wires. It never went out again for the rest of the time I was confined in that cell. I continued with my daily prayers, which had become more of a one-sided conversation, and asked the Lord to help me along this pathway of sincere belief. I knew that there would be no parting of any skies, big booming voice saying something very inspirational, but maybe something that could be a focus of my devotional conversations. I tried to remember all I could about that first Christian church, the one I was baptized in Columbia, the one I mentioned earlier. And I settled on one of those large stained glass windows of a cross that I would have etched into the wall myself. But I discovered that a fingernail just didn't cut it against concrete stucco. So I thought, this was built by the French, and the Vietnamese, when they defeated the French at Dien Bien Phu, imprisoned a lot of the French in that prison. So there must be a cross somewhere on these walls. And I went over the walls closely because I knew it wouldn't be easy to see. I looked all over and I hadn't seen it, so by golly, I was going to find it. I scoured the wall and I was surprised. I really was surprised that I found nothing. So I was dejected. I laid on my back on that cold concrete slab, and that was a violation of the camp regulations, all right? Well, that could get you in a lot of trouble, but I didn't care. Because I was busy conversing with my God, and breaking the camp regulations wasn't as dire as it might have been. After all, there was another blackest criminal right across the hallway. So I went to sleep. Now, there's yet another violation of the camp regulations. So I'm piling them up here. I awoke suddenly, abruptly, startled for some reason. I didn't know what. I assumed it was probably a key in the lock because that would really get your attention. That meant that they wanted you out, probably for another interrogation. and my ears had become my eyes, because my sight maybe went out this far, but my ears could hear Hanoi over the walls. And to this day, I remember abruptly waking, and over the opposite concrete slab was a brilliant ray of light, and that light was enhanced by the moisture and dust, other things in the air, and it smashed right on the wall just across from me, right there. And where it hit the wall was a cross that was about a foot tall, right in the middle. If you can see the cross, it has a kind of a yellow glow to it there. Can you see it? That picture was painted by my younger sister after I had described this scene, because it was so important and dynamic, and I said, I want to show what that looked like in the book. It is in the book. And we named it Valley of the Shadow, 23rd Psalm. But I rushed over and I touched it, and it was there. It was really there. And how could I have missed it? Well, I'm still fighting a logical mind. It said, well, it's probably there all along. You just didn't see all of it at one time. And I looked back to the barred window to see where that brilliant light was coming from. And it was the sun. It was the sun. It slipped down below a low cloud deck, and still above the prison wall, was perfectly aligned with my window and the cross on the opposite wall. Now, what caused that ray of light to move down as the earth rotated and put it right on that cross, with the cross in the middle? And then awaken me in time to just get up and see that right there. And I watched the clouds slowly fill the gap, but I couldn't help but look at that dingy light bulb, and I couldn't help but look at that cross. And I thought, coincidence? That kind of a thing? Coincidence? But then my thought settled on, maybe I just didn't yet know how to hear my Father's answer. Faith in God, comfort and strength. Now, one of the discussions that persisted between the pessimist of our group and the optimist was the likelihood or lack thereof, whether our country, when there was a final peace accord, would demand our release. And these talks had drug on for a long time, 2 years up to that point. We were constantly told our country was going to abandon us, just as the French had been abandoned, and that we would be tried as war criminals I, as a reconnaissance pilot, was a spy and would be executed, as many others of us would be. Many of the French captured at Dien Bien Phu and then marched to Hanoi to be imprisoned in that same prison were abandoned by France. France, of course, was defeated and driven out of Vietnam, and they had little recourse to recover their prisoners of war. So the logical argument between the pessimists and the optimists, the pessimist argument was we were just a big liability, which we were to our country, and we were just out of luck. Our country would most likely not pay the exorbitant ransom that was demanded for our return. Material, recognition, political support and actions, no, wasn't going to happen. Nor would we commit the loss of lives and aircraft that would wreak enough havoc on North Vietnam to convince them that they should release us. In fact, Hanoi was even more heavily defended than was Moscow. And with the same radar, aimed surface-to-air missiles, and anti-aircraft artillery, a lot of it manned also by the Soviets. Now the optimistic view, which I favored, even though I fancied myself more of a logical realist, which actually meant I just didn't have the guts to pick one side or the other. So I favored the optimistic view, and the main point there was, hey, we are American after all. That was kind of a weak argument, actually, and drawn more on faith than on logic. But you know, after 5 years, faith was not a stranger to me anymore. I knew my life was a race between my declining health and our nation's ability to conclude a peace agreement that would affect our release. I didn't know it then, but I had malaria, and the parasite had been burrowing its way into my organs, causing my ever-decreasing level of health. I had asthma-like difficulty breathing at times. I had intermittent profuse sweats and shivering chills just by stepping from here to there, if it was one of them in the sun and the other one in the shade. Heart palpitations, other signs of encroaching disabilities, but I kept the faith. I did, and I had faith to keep. It was building. I continued to remember what my first long-term cellmate, just the two of us for a couple of years, told me as he coached me in my search for religious faith. He said, "John, the Lord has said, my son, you have passed through many trials, and there are many more before you. But pass through them you shall, for if my Father wanted you by his side, you would be there." So I trudged on one tough day at a time. Faith by my side, in my heart, faith in my God and in America. Coming up, my favorite slide. Now, how can you not love that slide? That's my warrior eagle. That is one pissed off bird, now I'm telling you. the ground beneath us shook like a bowl of jiggled jello, but only briefly. Perhaps I thought a small earthquake in the mountains somewhere near the valley, because the valley that Hanoi is was just a big delta, it was all mud. There were some aftershocks, so possibility of some bombing, but the shakes just lasted too long. And besides, there was a bombing halt, hoping that the Vietnamese would return to the negotiating table in Paris. But the talks had broken down, and so nothing was going on. Then we heard it. Thunder. We had open windows that we could see out of, and there were no clouds. And yet this thunder, holy cow, our president has sent our buffs, the B-52s, to bomb Hanoi and get us released. B-52s, massive destruction thing. We cheered, and we cheered loudly. Now, the guards didn't like it, but they did not yet know what they were in for. We did, and over the ensuing days and nights, terror just rained from the sky. Now, we had large barred open windows from which we could see about, whoa, there's another story there. Yay, there it is. Those three windows you see were three windows that were in our section, in our cell. I and several other fellows were in that cell, along with John McCain, by the way. And so we could look through those windows, especially if we got on each other's backs. And I'm telling you, when the buffs came to town, Hanoi just erupted like a volcano. The sky was just full of explosions, surface-to-air missiles, high-altitude anti-aircraft shells exploding, tracers of all kinds. Some just shot up into the air, unmanned, barrage fire, they called it, hoping that one of our airplanes would just fly into a bullet. Well, and we did once in a while. We called them a silver bullet. We didn't like them, but they were up there. And you'd have to remember, and a lot of you guys know, that you see one tracer and about 6 or 8 bullets that not tracers are in the sky with them. There were huge explosions on the ground as the bombs fell, and surface-to-air missiles missed their target and rocketed back to explode in Hanoi, the very city they were supposed to be protecting. Okay, we're going to try another slide. Oh, this is a cover-up slide. When our first anti-radar missiles, can't remember the mission name, flown by the 105s, carried missiles, and could track the radar signal that was coming out of the radar aimed guns and missiles. So those 105s that come blowing in there, they'd pick up these radar signals that were painting them. They'd pull up and do a Immelman and just head out after they released the missiles, which would then find the radar signal beam and home in on it. Oh, they made a mess of those radar those radar establishments that were sitting out there aiming that stuff. But you could hear them. They'd swoosh and boom. Well, we knew what was coming. They were clearing the sky. The air raid sirens blew, lights went out, guards fled for their concrete manholes. We climbed into the windows, sometimes on each other's back. But then, after all of that hurrah, there was another thrill. After everything had settled down and the lights had kind of come back on sort of spastically, and the guards kind of started peeking out of their manholes and slipping out, the Navy A-6s would blow through. Light bombers flying off of aircraft carriers. They could sneak in under the radar in the weather, and they would just blow through a couple of them, and then they were gone. Well, when they did that, of course, the lights went off, the sirens blew, all that stuff was going on. Everybody just waited for the B-52s or whatever was going to follow. And sometimes these guys just made a low pass over the prison just to say, hi guys, you know, we know you're here, we're doing what we can. And when the Buffs were gone, Hanoi, still dark, settled into a massive halo of fire. I mentioned that. And the lights that still would seemingly come on reluctantly. The guards would slink out of their manholes, but more respectfully. But wait. Suddenly, the roar of the Navy intruder. Bombs exploding, more flashes of fire. The guards would run for their manholes. They didn't know whether the B-52s were coming or not. They didn't know what was going on. The intruder had struck and had gone even before the sirens blew. Well, when that was done, it was like, is it clear? Is it not? So there might be another flight sitting out there. Wait until they turned the lights on, and through they would come. Well, the guards became bleary-eyed, afraid, sleep-deprived. Hanoi's radar was just destroyed. Their guns and missiles were being just fired willy-nilly. They were running out of both surface-to-air missiles, anti-aircraft shells, could not get resupplied. And let's not forget that our B-52s well remembered the port at Haiphong and the rail line running from China into Hanoi. They weren't there anymore either. When no worthwhile targets remained in Hanoi surrounding area, Henry Kissinger, President Nixon's Secretary of State, announced that he himself would be at the peace talks in Paris the next day. And would you believe that the always tardy and reluctant peace delegation from North Vietnam was there, and they were ready to talk? Well, ladies and gentlemen, my country beat my malaria, and I stand here this evening. I still talk to my God, and He answers in many ways. At a reunion, we hug as a band of brothers, and oh yes, Sis is still as irritating as she always has been. Faith in God, country, family, fellow prisoners, and faith in yourself. God bless this gathering, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Whoa, it got out of hand.
Colonel, do you have time for a few questions?
Sure, sure. You better take this, or I'm going to just go willy-nilly.
Lauren?
I can't be left with something like this.
So I noticed during your speech you talked about how you were coerced into writing that admission of your guilt and whatnot, and some of the tricks that you did to kind of bypass that and let it be known that it was done under coercion. And that is actually something that I was taught when I went through the SEER course at Fort Rucker in Alabama. My question is, how much did they kind of ask you for your advice and other experiences for the SEER program to be developed?
Not so much myself, but a lot of the guys contributed a great deal to that SEER program. And one of the big issues was just, it wasn't described in our code of conduct, but just how much should you be expected to take in the way of torture and that sort of thing. Now, there were some amazing men up there that could take it until they died. Some did. And they said that is not the intention of this course, is to teach you how to die. They'll figure that out themselves. But where do you stop? Because what we intend for you to do is take as much as you can, then give in, then come back to resist. That drove them nuts because they didn't see that very often. They didn't, and I'm not speaking of a few Americans. The Americans were incredibly famous for it. They could just torture us until we had nowhere to go, but do whatever they wanted. And then just as soon as our injuries started to heal, they'd come in to call you in to write something for the anti-war movement. No, go screw yourself. I'm not doing it. What? You will be punished. Over again, you know. They finally got tired of doing that. They knew it wasn't going to happen. But that's kind of how it went, and that is much of the feedback that was given to the SEER program, and how to withstand. And one of the things was how to waste time. I expect you were probably taught that. They only have so much time. You would think they had all the time in the world, but no, they've got other prisoners they have to talk to, they have other propaganda and all this kind of stuff. If you can eat up the time, that's just better for you. So, and they said, each one of you should have a second line of defense. You're not going to hold the first line of defense. It's not going to happen. So something that you can use to confuse them, delay an answer, any of that sort of thing will help you. I was just a brand new captain, and they didn't they didn't think I was very smart, and no, I'm in good shape. I'm just playing a game with you. That was my second line of defense. I could waste a lot of time. But that was mine. Not the first time it's worked. And thank you very much for the water. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Was there ever...
Was there ever any time while you were there that you were able to express your faith to the enemy? Or did you ever get, was there ever a time where the enemy, the guards or anyone may have had faith themselves that they didn't want to?
That's a good question, and it's a long answer. I'll shorten it up a little bit. Yes is the answer to your question. We were out at Sante for quite a while, and we thought it prudent to kind of reverse the, what is the word for it? Anyway, to get acquainted with the guards, attain information, and so we started asking these young guards questions. They'd come around, they'd open these barred windows to look and sternly see what we were up to, which was nothing when they looked in. But so we said, hey, we're going to befriend these guys, you know. So we did. We said, hey, Wynn, or whatever name we called him, hey, have you got a wife? And they go, huh? So, you know, what? Wife? Oh, yeah, I got a wife. Little, yeah, baby, yeah, two, okay. We're making headway here, see. And it wasn't long, because we usually had a picture. Some of the guys had pictures of the families that had been sent. And so they would show. So guess what? The guards would bring pictures of their families in. Oh, yeah. And the officers of the camp would maintain a pretty close eye on this. When they felt like they were getting too familiar, they'd disappear. A whole new group would come in. About a month, here they were back. Eat, you know, and they're hollering and yelling and telling us to do this and that. And, well, they, what we call, sent them to hate school. And they talked to them about all of the dastardly things we'd done. And they hated us. They didn't take so long to warm them up again. So that's one of the stories.
John, your book's a great read, and one of the stories that always sticks in my mind that I thought maybe they might like to hear is the pact you had on who would go home first and how that played out when the time came for you to go home. Would you want to talk about that?
Sure. It's in the book, and well, see, I can't do anything. Thank you very much. Well, you can have it now that you've gained it. Thank you. Anyway, where was I going? Help me. Oh, yeah. Well, that was one of the things that was decided by our senior ranking officers, and it was absolutely the thing to do. We'd had guys that by the time I was shot down, they'd been there 2.5 years. Ev Alvarez was the earliest shot down. Some Navy guys. Anyway, there was no other way that you could really say it, hey, the first ones shot down are going to be the first ones that go home. That's the way it's going to be. Now, there were some that didn't comply with that, and we didn't and still don't include them in our group, maybe 5 or something like that, traitors. Well, it was after the first group went home, about 100 and some of the guys on 2 or 3 airplanes went home. And then there were 20 of us. Charlie Plum, I think a lot of you have heard Charlie Plum speak, know of him, was in the group. But they picked out 20 of us out of different cells and put us in a cell all alone by ourselves. And they said, you gentlemen, they didn't call us gentlemen, but have been picked to be released as a guest of Henry Kissinger, who's making a visit the next day or so. And we said no, because we were out of order. There were guys that were there a later shoot down than several of the other guys. And I was in about the middle somewhere. But anyway, we said, no, we're not going to do this. We have this pact. We have orders from our commanding officer. Nobody is going home before anybody that was shot down before them. I said, oh, they raised hell and carried on. Well, as it turns out then, they gave us a couple of chances. And we said no. And then their final chance was, okay, you create great loss of face. And we are, if you refuse to go home, you will be lost in the Vietnamese penal system. You will be lost in our prisons. No one will ever hear from you again or know of you again, and you will die there. Well, we'd been treated pretty brutally, and we had every reason to believe that would probably be the case, but we said, nope, not gonna happen. Just like a flag standing there in the cell, and we all had our hand on it, wasn't going to happen. And probably the next morning, or might even be that afternoon, but it was right in that time frame somewhere. We're just wondering, okay, you know. And here comes this full boat Air Force colonel with all of, what looked kind of like my picture, with all of the scrambled eggs and all that stuff. Young guy, you know, looking good, medals, all that stuff. And he had a guard on either side, AK-47s, the whole thing. And he came up and we saw him, holy cow, you know. Stood at attention, our senior rank officer threw him a salute. He saluted back and said, gentlemen, I bring news to you from your commanding officer here in the Hanoi Hilton, from your chief of staff, and from the highest rank of our nation.